So a while back, I reviewed Frieren at Journey's End, and when I did that video, I said that I also wanted to talk about the other big fantasy anime out at the time, Delicious in Dungeon. There's just one itty bitty problem, and that is that I actually hadn't started Delicious in Dungeon yet. I know. Everyone's been praising the hell out of this show for the entire year so far, so I knew I had to get to it. And you know what? I elected to make time, and you know what I realized when I actually sat down and watched this show? Wow, this show is really slow. This is a show that is in no hurry to get anywhere. There is no strong sense of forward momentum. And even though it has a very obvious goal, it's going to take every side tangent possible getting there. And you know what? In today's anime climate, that can ruin a show. So many animes these days suffer from bad pacing because they prioritize more world building, setting up side characters for future story arcs, and then just like getting sidetracked whenever at all possible instead of actually getting to a goal in a reasonable amount of time, that it makes a lot of fantasy anime a slog to get through. So, when I saw that happening here, all I could think to myself was, oh dear fucking God, how can this show do this and be so much fucking fun? Yeah, that's right, people. I'm not here to say this show is bad. This show is great. Like, objectively, it shouldn't be. Like, in a very real way, this show should be insufferable. It should be uninteresting. It should fall into every pit hole that so much stuff is falling into nowadays. And it's just not. And of course, the question is, why? Well, many people attribute it to the world building, the characters. That's all important. But I have a different theory. I wholeheartedly believe Delicious in Dungeon's success is due to that slow pacing. It is due to the fact that this show has perfectly figured out how to go at its own pace, set up its own rules, and teach you, the viewer, how you are supposed to watch it. This is all done in an insanely clever way that we're going to sit down and talk about today, going over each aspect of the show because you do not just do stuff like this without a plan. There's got to be some intelligent work going on behind the scenes, and we're going to talk about that today. And next week, we're talking about a show that had very unintelligent scene stuff going on behind the scenes. But yeah, for right now, let us begin with right where the show begins, because in order to make this show's pacing work, you need to get all the information to the audience quickly and correctly. You will have plenty of time as your show aimlessly wanders around to give people more details on things. But so long as you can secure that very simple, easy to follow premise, you are set. And this show does that very well by going back to the time-honored storytelling tradition of the plot revolving around save the maiden from the dragon. Now, yes, there's a lot of added details to this, i.e., the maiden's already been eaten by the dragon, and you're trying to get to the body before it gets digested so you can revive it and put the soul back. So yeah, that's already an extra layer of things, but that basic emotional core for the audience is present right from the start. So you already know what sort of plot you're in for, which also makes it very easy to then put other stuff in the way, because if you've done it correctly, which you have, you know what your end goal is, and you feel like you're just experiencing the journey as it happens more or less in real time. From there, you also have to have characters who are a complement to this, and you have that very well. You have main character Laios, who is a good-natured but a little aloof adventurer just trying to save his sister captured by said dragon. You've got Marcel, a sort of like magic expert. She's also kind of like primmy and acts as a good foil to everyone's insanity. You've got Shoutak, who's just kind of this like just traveling rogue who's just kind of here because it's his job, but does learn to obviously care about people as the story goes. And of course you have Senshi, who is the best character. This man is a Giga Chad, and I loved every scene with him. Senshi's fucking awesome. These four characters are very simple in how they're presented to us, but because of this, you kind of know what you're going to get with them, so they're very easy to identify with and then like. Everyone has a very well-defined role amongst the group from the minute they're introduced. And because of this, you're always able to then just follow what's going on and like them for it. Laios is the perfect protagonist for this sort of story. He's presented as this guy who's very fascinated in the dungeon that they're going through and all the different monsters and wants to learn about them and experience different things in there. Which is perfectly contrasted to Marcel and Shotuk, who are like, oh god, this is fucking insane. This is crazy. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And then finally, you have Senshi, who is the perfect example of someone who knows about everything around him, but it's always presented like he knows these things in a very like natural sort of easy way to understand. He's a lot older than the rest of the group. He's had a lot more time to explore and is more world weary. All four of these characters are written in ways so that their intelligence always comes out when needs be, their goofy sides are always there when they have to be, and their likability and charisma is just there and present at all times. Because everything with everyone has been kept very simple, you can then set everyone else on the world journey they are about to embark on. And most of that journey, in case you couldn't tell by the title of the show, involves food. That's right. This Save the Dragon story, or Save the Maiden from the Dragon story, is constantly getting derailed because these guys are fucking hungry. Yeah, we spend more time in this show just showing how they capture monsters, prepare them for food, make up different recipes. I really love the way it integrates real-world cooking techniques and real-world food ideas into this more sort of fantastical setting. We had an anime like this that came out last year, but A, it's an isekai, so I already hate it. But also what separates that from this is this goes into so much detail about how the elements of the world we're in influence how the cooking works that it makes it feel real. There's so much extra detail. And it's, again, because it's always from likable characters, you're always just sort of in and enjoying it. The other thing the show does well is it does get to world building. It does get to rich lore and different factions and all these things you want to learn, but because it's secured so many of those ground elements, because everything has been taken care of right at the beginning, you can build on everything naturally and organically. The sort of like ongoing world crisis involving elves and humans and all these other different mini species, you get to see how it all kind of builds based on what happens and the characters that the actions our characters take. That's really clever, and it might not sound like it. It should sound like that should be something normal, but honestly, it almost feels like this art has been lost these days. Everything is so obsessed with getting everything out to you so quickly and in a way that it can sell other spin-off novels. This series sets out from the beginning to address everything organically and naturally. And that is how you get everyone to be involved with a slow-paced show. If you set up every element correctly and are willing to dedicate yourself to what it takes to making those aspects come across, the audience will go along with everything. I'm okay waiting for them to get to Fallon because in the meantime, you are constantly being given great character interactions, interesting adversaries for them to deal with, interesting challenges for them to overcome, and just a lot of good ass looking food. As for like some of the other stuff people have talked about, yes, the show looks great. Some of you may know this, I'm a Studio Trigger fanboy. I'll check out anything they put out, eventually at least. And this is definitely a really pretty show on their half. The unique Trigger style is actually the perfect blend for this show, sort of like zany, but also kind of like intense gothic look. I think it really does come across, especially in the fight scenes, which do become more apparent as the show goes on. The music is also great. Love me that first opening to death. As far as negatives go, because we're winding down here, now is of course the time to talk about some issues. I will say, as enjoyable as the show goes, yeah, not every little cooking scenario is that interesting, and sometimes you definitely probably could have breezed through some stuff otherwise. In terms of everything else though, well, I definitely feel like I care more about our main characters than the other stuff going on in the world. But I do think all that is done well. And again, like I said, they've done everything right so that you will follow it and be interested, at least interested enough. But yeah, that is Dungeon Meshi, a genuine example of how to do a show right on your own terms and your own pacing by just doing everything right. It might sound like a weird statement to say, but if you want to dedicate your series to being unique and having its own unique elements, you have to commit to it. No backtracking, no relying on time honored tropes, so there are a couple of those here that complement the story very well. It is be dedicated to what you want to do and be proud of it. That is what this series did, and I hope every anime takes a lesson going forward, because it looks like this show did very well and is getting a second season, which I will make sure to be here for. But what did you think about Dungeon Meshi? Did you like this show? Did you not like it? Do you like the slow pacing? Did it kind of get to you a lot? Kind of got to me occasionally, but I think it is one of the more unique aspects of the show and one of the more fun aspects to talk about it with. Give me your thoughts about all that below. And as always, click to like and click to subscribe, because next week we're talking about the opposite of this show.